should an e-bike look like a traditional bicycle with a motor strapped on and a battery strapped on? Is that the limit, or is that the optimal form factor? And I think when our team thought about it, we thought, well, no. When you add a motor, the impact of aerodynamics changes. Like, do you need to optimize for aerodynamics if you now have a motor adding 300 to 400% of additional power? Well, no. So then could you, allow the rider to sit a bit more upright and be more comfortable? Yes, you could, because you have a motor. So how you weight things changes when you add a motor. And so, I think those are things that, we don't really, at Tern, we don't care too much about convention. And if something doesn't make sense, we're happy to change it. And we're really happy that a lot of the rest of the cycling world has now said, hey, I think what those guys are doing makes a little bit of sense. And so now we see this profusion of compact cargo bikes. I think you have to be willing to take some risks. Sometimes they don't work out. You have to take educated guesses. But I remember, even among the team, we debated. We said, what is this bike going to look like? So one person on the team said, hey, it's got to be folding. That's what we do. It needs to fold. And my argument was, if you really want to carry a lot of weight, a hinge in the middle doesn't work very well. That's always going to be your weak spot. And so I think we need to eliminate the hinge. And that was a big thing. And then after we had moved along in the process and we had developed it, we showed the concept to our largest distributor, and they said, no, we don't want that. Don't do it. We don't want it. Doesn't make sense. Give us a folding bike. And that was actually, so if you are somebody who goes, wow, you have to listen to focus groups and we have to do research and listen to the consumers, well, that would have just, right, we would have, okay, stop, kill it, let's do a folding bike. But I think, the thing that's interesting about our team is that we are also the user. We are the customer. And so because we had been riding the bike and we understood it and we were like, this thing is really, it's good. It's good. So even though our customer, our largest customer said, don't do it, we just basically said, well, we don't think they really understand it yet. So we're going to do it anyway. Now, that's a huge risk. Our mission is to get people out of cars and onto bikes, and really just, right, we have this issue now with climate change, right, for the 60% of Americans that believe in climate change and the rest of the world. It's a huge issue. And, in the United States, it's something like 29% of emissions are caused by motor vehicles. 29%. So it's huge. And so if you can just take, and it's close to 50% of trips are less than, I think it's 5 kilometers or 3 miles, right? So it's just this huge number of trips that are being made are very short. And so we look at it and say, look, if you can just convert 10 or 20% of those trips into bike trips, that would make a very sizable impact on emissions, right? It's hard, right? Reducing emissions is really, really hard. But if you can say, look, if your trip is only 2 miles away to the post office or to the supermarket, doing it by an e-bike or a regular bike it's not actually that hard. And so that's our goal, is to make those vehicles that kind of get rid of some of the barriers, right, to cycling. So that's basically what we think about all day long. In Switzerland, it was actually one of our dealers. And he would periodically write these long missives. And, hey, this thing doesn't work really well. It could be improved this way. Why does this breaks so easily, and then it's not serviceable. This is terrible, right? And so after several of these, and then in the end, we were like, well, actually, he's kind of right on this thing. We could improve it. And finally, this was quite a few years back, but we just said, would you like to join our design team as a consultant? And he said yes. And so, so it's been, there are a lot of relationships that are just kind of organic that way. And now he's a dear friend. We started as a folding bike company, and so that's always going to be part of our DNA. But ultimately, we're about urban mobility, so having people move around. So we're really not fixated on, hey, we're this or we're that, but it's what ways can we get more people out of cars? We think the bike is by far, one of the best ways, but are scooters in there? Yes. That's a lot less resources and less polluting than a car, and so that's good too. Public transport, that's good too. We don't have much expertise in public transport, so we don't do that. Vans work in some places, long distances, but in crowded urban cities, vans don't work very well, right? If you're in Manhattan, there's a lot of double parking, there's blocking, creating more traffic, there's air pollution, there's noise pollution, there are all these kind of really negative effects. And then because it's a crowded city, they're not actually that fast, right? There have been studies, right? I think those of us in the transport field know that there have been studies showing that in a lot of cities, and you can just look at average speeds, cargo bikes can make more deliveries per hour than a van.